The Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist, whether you're running, swimming, or sleeping. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. The Apple Watch Series 10, available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generations, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
The sound of praise for your Sunday morning.
The only one who could ever teach me.
Introducing Reverend A.R. Bernard of the Christian Cultural Center.
Was the son of a preacher man.
And Rabbi Joseph Potasnik of Religion on the Line.
The only one who could ever teach me.
Now, on Talk Radio 77 WABC, here's the Rev and the Rabbi, where faith matters.
Good morning, I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
You know, Reverend, in order for people from Long Island to see me, they have to pay $9, congestion fee pricing. And I was very touched when you said that you would come in, but we have to split the $9. That meant that really, you know, was very, very beautiful moment for me.
Well, we have the governor of New Jersey also trying to push back against, and that's because, you know, there are quite a few Jerseyites who work in Manhattan, and they're feeling it.
So, Rev, let me ask you. I guess we call this the bishop and the president. People have read the story, seen the story. Bishop Budde, the bishop, right?
Bishop Mariann Budde, who's the leader of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, and you know, she, according to all the reports, she attacked the president.
She lectured. She attacked. He was a captive. He came with his family, and there were others there for a service. And she went into a sermon that really was directed at his policy in terms of immigration.
She presented it as a plea for mercy on behalf of, you know, all the people who are right now terrified. And Rabbi, you know, people are terrified across the board, especially with the kind of talk that we're hearing.
So
what do you say?
I think the question is, what is the best strategy when you have the President of the United States and you want to discuss, not harangue, you want to discuss policy? To me, the best way is to say, at some point, Mr. President, privately, I'd like to have a meeting. I'd like to understand the policy. I want to express my concerns. But when you have someone who's really captive, sitting in the front row and cannot respond, cannot present the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. I don't think that's a superior approach.
Well, this is not in defense of her and what she did, but maybe she didn't believe she could get that audience, so she took advantage of the opportunity. Not only that, think about the fact that she's LGBTQ plus, and she may have felt that she was representing her community. You know, who knows what was going on. So
where does this
mind.
go? I mean, I understand the constituency very much favored the approach, but where do you go with this? If you really want to have that dialogue, and there are others who want to join with you, I think an invitation. We've sat down with people who we've disagreed with and had some very constructive conversations. But I think by having someone in the front row and, you know, presenting in a way where he cannot tell you his side of the story, that's not going to move any needle.
Here's where you catch more flies with honey, right, than vinegar. You know, I personally would have said, Mr. President, I hope that you and I will have the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation about some of your policies concerning immigration, concerning LGBTQ. Right. You know, I would have taken that route, Rabbi. But, you know, you and I are different when it comes to that.
Look, obviously there are people who are praising her for that, and there are people who are criticizing her for that. I always ask, what is the more effective approach? Where am I going to make a difference? How can I, in some way, push this forward so we can have a meaningful dialogue and allow, by the way, also inspire others to have that conversation? There are people who have different points of view. How do we become a model for disagreement? And I just thought that this was not the approach that I would have taken. But you said to me, it's her lane, right? It's her church.
Yeah.
She can do whatever she wants.
Yeah. But I like what you said that, at the end of the day, no matter what approach you took, it's going to be criticized. And in our New Testament scripture, we compare John the Baptist's approach, which was fiery and austere and demanded the highest of standards and a separation from sin and repentance. Then you have Jesus who, he sat down with the sinners and hung out with them. John was accused of having a demon. Jesus was accused of being a drunkard, a winebibber, a friend of sinners. And at the end of the day, he says that, whether you approach it the way John did or whether you approach it the way he did, you're going to have criticism. No matter what you do, people are going to be critical because you didn't do it the way they felt you should have done it. So what do? You know what I mean? We find the best approach that we think, and then we execute.
I think we have to answer, obviously to ourselves. We have to ask, what does our tradition tell us to do? But I'm also one who's very in favor of trying to, I've met with people who I've opposed, but I've met with them and have some serious dialogue, and we walked away still maintaining a relationship. And I think this plays well to some. It doesn't play well to others. At the end of the day, nothing has been really accomplished.
Well, that's a problem because she's not going to get a meeting with him now.
A meeting? Won't even get an invite to come into the through the front door. But all right, look. The other thing I want to say to you is I'm glad the president met with the families of hostages at the inauguration because, sometime a tragedy occurs and you're forgotten. My mother would always say that people come to visit you during the Shiva, the period of mourning, but that when it's over, you don't see them again. And these people have been through such a horror. They're still in pain. And to know that they are there. And by the way, some of the people who are there, their loved ones have been killed. They want the bodies back. So at least we had the Nutra family on the air a while ago. Right. Their son was killed, and they were there. So to know that we're not going to give up, but we're going to fight for the return of all of the hostages.
But isn't that important, Rabbi, that leaders show empathy? I mean, how can you lead? How can you get people to believe in you, trust in you, and support you if you don't show empathy? If you don't show a sensitivity to their plight, you may not, even if you don't agree with them, still there should be this sense of, I understand, this human experience that you've been through.
And I will stand with you during this painful period. Right. What do we call that? The theology of presence, that I am here with you. We have two guests on today because we're looking at the calendar, and it speaks of International Holocaust Remembrance Day on Monday, tomorrow, which recalls the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau and, people who were finally removed from horrific places, who had lost loved ones and had to begin again. And we remember those who gave their lives and remember those who still are alive and trying very much to get the message out there. So we have a member of your congregation.
So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with some incredible conversation right here on the Rev and the Rabbi.
At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner, however you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
Be honest. When's the last time you had a homemade meal? We get it. Between meetings, workout classes, and the kids' after-school sports, who's got time to cook? That's where HelloFresh comes in. No matter how busy you get, HelloFresh has everything you need to get an easy, home-cooked meal on the table. With flavor-packed recipes like Parmesan herb-crusted salmon, you'll be filling your kitchen with the cozy aromas of a homemade meal in no time. So go ahead, try HelloFresh. It's homemade, made easy. Learn more at HelloFresh.com.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potosnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, we have as a guest a member of the Christian Cultural Center that you and I both know. And why don't you have the honor of introducing him?
An upstanding member. He and his family, his lovely wife, for quite a few years. And I've watched him grow and develop and always been intrigued about what he's intrigued about. Because he, and one of the questions that we'll ask him is about his involvement with the Holocaust and Holocaust survivors. His name is Bill Tingling, author, educator for Holocaust studies, and far beyond that. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bernard and Rabbi Potosnik.
So let's start there, Bill. You're an African-American guy, Caribbean descent, matter of fact. And yet you have given a major portion of your time and amazing work. You've been honored by several organizations on this. What is it that drew you to this need to educate about the Holocaust?
We live our lives in stages and experience each stage as we move forward. About 30 years ago, I met a wonderful woman. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. And I was given the task to do a story on Yonkers, how African-American built Yonkers. In the interim, I met a lovely lady. Her name was Sally Frisberg, a Holocaust survivor. And there my life became revolutionized, in which we are now able to merge African-American studies with Holocaust studies. And that's where my new journey began, with Holocaust studies. Here goes another trigger. A few years ago, I had the opportunity of going into the Ukraine to study Holocaust matters, what took place there in the interim. I worked with the youngest Holocaust survivor, Samuel Baikov, stood on that blood-soaked ground in Bogdanovka, where 54,000 Jews were massacred in less than 14 days, and only 122 survived. Samuel Baikov was one of those 122. Much more people were prosecuted and murdered in Bogdanovka than in Babi Yar. Babi Yar was 37,000 in less than 2 days. So what that era of emotion and intellect and empathy has driven me to another level of creativity. From that, we were able to create with my team. We have a few professors who work with us. We were able to create, it took me 2.5 years to do this, the untold story of the Holocaust. It is not just a book. It's an immersive educational experience that brings Holocaust history to life to survivors' testimonies. It integrates advanced technology with interactive elements, ensure future generations understand the depth of this strategy. So we are now redefining the narrative of the Holocaust, not just as a story of persecution and genocide, but as a comprehensive chronicle of conquest, strategy, and war. So from there now, I'm able to share with you, gentlemen, that we are in the process of creating a 10-volume series called The Germany Military Systematic Destruction of Europe, taking readers deep into the battles that shaped the Nazis' takeover of Eastern Europe country by country, revealing details that have rarely, if ever, have been explored. For example, when the Germans set their sights on Poland, they assembled a staggering 1.5 million soldiers, 1,900 aircraft, over 2,000 tanks, as a calculated military onslaught known as the Blitzkrieg, lightning war, lightning speed. So what we have done, we have meticulously recreated their planning process, dissected their maps, analyzed their strategic maneuvers, and studied their leadership decisions that enabled them to ruthlessly overpower nations. Most people do not realize that the Nazis conquered 17 countries during their campaign. Don't realize that at all. But we have examined these conquests in detail, focusing on significant battles, the generals who led them, the strategies that sealed their victory. This is more than just a military history. It is an expose, one may say, of the Nazi Germany systematic.
Bill, let me stop you for a moment. Let me stop you for a moment.
Yeah, I've got some questions too, Rabbi. Yeah. Go ahead. You first.
Bill, as a child of survivors, I am so grateful to you for your work, and you and I have had conversations. How do we get what happened in the past to have an impact on the present? When you see the rising anti-Semitism, precipitous rise of anti-Semitism, we can tell the story, but how do we in combat the hatred that's being thrust at many Jews today?
The answer to that is this. The great writer says that if we fail to correct the past, eventually it's going to repeat itself. What we need to do is strategic. What is strategic? Education. Education is strategic. So, in our opinion, we think that the way the Holocaust studies has been taught is boring, and it meets a certain standard, and what we have done is taking it to another level for, let's call it the bling bling level, in which these young people are now able to entertain, for example, our book interactively, technologically. So the book that we have itself is an independent book, meaning they don't need a teacher or a professor to guide them, to work with them on it. They use their phone, they hover over it. For example, Rabbi Potasnik, you are the son of a Holocaust survivor. The students now, okay, let me look into Rabbi Potasnik's family. They would hover their phone over the chat box and talk to the chat box. The chat box name is Samuel. Samuel, could you tell me some more information about Rabbi Potasnik's family? This is where he's from. And in details and on time, the chat box will be able to respond to you immediately. In other words, gentlemen, the book becomes alive in your hands. So education would be a fantastic way, the way we're doing it technologically and interactively with our immediate American, I'm going to use the word American youth, starting from the 8th grade, high school, college, and universities levels. So I think that's the important piece. Us as individuals in American, us as educators, us as parents and caring individuals to be able to take this level of anti-Semitism, studies, hatred, and bring it into the system one by one. The great writer says one can lead 1,000 and two could put 10,000 to flight. I believe this is the way to do it.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Bill, and Rabbi, you as well, because Your passion comes in, loud and clear, Bill. But it sounds like a re-indictment of the German people. Do you think that you would get a reaction from the German people, like they're being re-indicted on this whole issue? Um, what are your thoughts? And Rabbi, of course, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that
Bill,
as
you
well.
go first.
Bill?
Well, yes, sir. No, it is not an indictment. First of all, the Third Reich, after World War One, they became weak. And because of that, they were able to now develop a new nationalistic ideology, a system that would now enfold the German people. The indictment is not on the German people. The Third Reich was able to use their weakness after World War One to redevelop and redefine a new Germany, a destructive way of annihilating certain people and blaming the Jewish people. So, no, it is not an indictment. It is more of a separation of why, how, when, and the end results.
One of the things that I have seen over the years is that the German people want very much to separate themselves, use that word separation. They want to show that they are ashamed of the past, and this is not who they are today. We don't want to be defined by what happened yesterday. We're not going to ignore it. We're not going to cover it up, but we are not them. And you find a strong relationship today, for example, between Germany and Israel. You find a number of Germans who go to Israel during the summer and do volunteer work. So I think Germany, to a great extent, has said there is this Germany that is so different than that Germany. And look, we can't fault them for what their ancestors did. You're not defined by your ancestors; you're defined by your actions. So
But it begs the question, Rabbi: did the German people, did the present German nation, German people, benefit from what took place in any way? Because now the conversation flips into the United States and slavery, and the fact that there are people who saying, "Well, I want to distance myself from the past. We're not, slave traders. We're not who my ancestors were." But there is that reality that they are beneficiaries of, hundreds of years of enslavement and segregation. How do we understand that in the German context?
Look, I remember my parents, when they arrived in this country, they did receive not much, but there were some payments made to them for pain and suffering. You can never compensate people enough for what happened. But there was that attempt to say, look, we're guilty, and we want to, in some way, give back that which was owed to you. So there was that spirit that I think made people say, well, wait a minute, we're dealing with a different generation here. But can't deny that they were beneficiaries of all that happened in the past. But again, you can't deny that they have written a different chapter for themselves that is not in any way ruined by the past.
Yeah. That's a tough thing to reconcile because, we're talking about reparations and all of that here in the United States. How do we respond to that responsibility of the past and at the same time, separate ourselves from it? It's not easy.
Yeah.
Bill, where do you expect this book to go, this study to go? You said it's educational. Are you looking in the public school system, private school systems? How are you looking to distribute this?
There are 300,000 high school students in New York, 400,000 middle school kids, the entire state of more than 1 million students that we hope to get it to. How? Well, we have aligned ourselves with the Department of Education and the State Department of Education to be able to, we're now vending in the system. However, we have another principle, another theory that we're working with. We want, if we are able to get enough sponsors, we'll be able to get the book into each school freely to all the high school and middle school and college kids in New York. We are now presently, Rabbi and Pastor, working with the Claims Conference. We have aligned ourselves with Touro College. And if we are able to get some heavy pocketers, let's say, for example, invest $50 million, within $100 million, to be able to get this curriculum, standalone curriculum, in New York, then nationally, then globally, then we'll be able to meet a strict, definitive, strong representation in the field of education to stopping hatred and to stopping anti-Semitism. Why? Because the book itself is an interactive piece. It's not even a book. We call it a curriculum in the book, meaning it's strongly independently worked for itself, in which the individual is not going to just put it down. No, they have their cell phone, they have their iPad, hover over it, and it speaks to them. So we are merging the technological with emotions, the heart, empathy, compassion, and inclusion. All that stuff.
All right, Bill,
so
thank you.
Dr. Bernard? Yes.
We've come to the end of the segment. How do people learn more about this?
Yeah, thanks, Rabbi.
We have a website, BillTingling.com.
TIGLIN.
Yes.
Okay.
No, TIN.
TIN.
Yeah, TINGLIN. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, .com. Or you call me, 718. May I give my number, gentlemen?
I'm not sure that's a good idea, Bill, but
I don't think it's a good idea to give your cell phone.
Give the pastor's number instead.
Yeah, right.
All right, Bill Tingling.
Before I forget, gentlemen, this book is also on Amazon. You could also always get it on Amazon. It's there.
Okay. And what's the name of the book? What's the title of the book?
The title of the book is One of Humanity's Darkest Hours, The Untold Story of the Holocaust.
Okay.
Excellent. Bill, thank you for being on the program.
Rev, I got to believe he's inspired by you. He's gone to your church for a number of years.
Yeah.
So I think part of the passion.
Much of this work comes from Dr. Bernard. He taught me. Dr. Bernard taught me all these years
Dr. Bernard,
in using the principles.
Now you get a percentage of the sales. It's a good thing. All right.
We'll have that conversation offline.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. So thank you, Bill.
Gentlemen.
Thank you for being on the program.
Thanks.
All right. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on 77 WABC.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC and the all-new WABCRadio.com.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, some time ago I met Sami Steigmann, and I was very taken by him. He's a Holocaust survivor, and of course, with my background as a child of survivors, I really admired his dedication to telling the story not just to older people, but to younger people. He would travel around to different schools and say, this is not just a message of yesterday. This is a message for you today, so we don't have a tomorrow that was like yesterday. Sami Steigmann, thanks for being with the Rev and the Rabbi.
I am very honored to be with you. Okay?
Yes, you are. Okay, we'll accept that. Sami, talk about you. Give us a little update as to your background, where this all began.
Okay. First of all, I'm a Holocaust survivor, child of Holocaust survivors, motivational speaker, unlike the professional ones that speak from the academic viewpoint. I give personal example, or if I use a cliche, what it means to me. At the same time, I'm an educator, and I am also an Israeli who served in the Israeli Air Force 1962-1965. The Holocaust is not a Jewish issue. It's a universal. It is a humanitarian issue. And we have to remember one thing. It started with the Jews, but it did not end there. The Holocaust must be taught forever and ever, because from my perspective, it's the only example or the best example that can teach people what hate can do to a person, to a group of people, to a nation, and to the world. At the same time, before I will go any further, I want to talk about the October 7th. With your permission, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so what happened in October 7th, I went through the gamut of emotions. I never thought as a Holocaust survivor that I will witness something, the Jew hatred, that is not only here in the United States, but worldwide. I was not surprised. Okay, I actually expected, what happened on October 7th. What shocked me was their brutality. And people try to make comparisons with the Nazis, and please don't. Okay, even the Nazis were not that brutal. Okay, if you really have to make comparisons, compare it to the brutality of ISIS. My parents and I were deported by the Romanians, not by the Germans, and I will explain later why. At the same time, being only a year and a half, I was subjected to medical experiments. The side effects, I felt them all my life, every single second. I still feel them and will feel them for the rest of my life. But I learned to live with the pain. I used extremely addictive, very powerful opioids that it affected my lifestyle. And I learned about 45 years plus to learn without painkillers. Okay, the other thing is that I want to say, my particular case, I have suffered and suffered from head, neck, shoulders, and back. They could not find a cure in my particular case because it's not localized. I don't know where it starts, how long it will be there, where it will go, the intensity of the pain. Okay, so I had to learn, to live with it. Surgery is not in my vocabulary. The other things also that I want to say is we have to understand that the Holocaust, the importance of it, during the Nazi regime, Jews died because we did not have a country. On Yom HaZikaron, our national Memorial Day, we remember the people that died, and even today, that fought and died for us to have a country. Okay, and as a Holocaust survivor, I am absolutely shocked of the Jew hatred that is worldwide. In some of the most prestigious campuses in this country, some of the brightest young people that we have, future leaders of this country and the world, when they will graduate, they will become educated idiots. And for Iran, they are useful idiots. And I want to remind everybody, because that's important in talking about the Holocaust. In every generation, they try to annihilate us. We prevailed. What's happening right now in the Middle East, we will prevail, we will win. And for the world, I have a very strong message. We are here to stay, whether you like it or not. Am Yisrael Chai. Now, Rabbi, I will allow you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say what I wanted to say.
Well, I will allow the Reverend to have the floor now.
Well, you think about speaking to someone like Sami. You're talking about an eyewitness, but also a victim and a survivor. I mean, we have all of these adjectives to describe his experience. But I would love for you to speak to the fact that anti-Semitism was the basic tenet of Nazi ideology. Talk about that ideology. Why the Jew? Why the Jew?
Why the Jew? Yeah. Well, first of all, it started. First of all, I want to tell you, I am not a victim. I have never felt like a victim. I was always a survivor. Okay, and that's what I teach the young people.
Excellent.
Okay, never consider yourself a victim, because you may not be able to achieve whatever you want. Always think and act as a survivor. And the whole world is in your hands. Now, What happened is it started with Christianity, believe it or not. Christianity, all the people, Jesus and the apostles and everybody, they were Jews. Now, how do you create a new religion and differentiate yourself from the religion that you came from? So they had to vilify, the Jews. Obviously, initially it was religious, then it became economic, depending on the time that we went through. Today it's Israel, today it's Zionism. Now, there is a virus that will never be eradicated. Bullying, bigotry, Jew hatred, hate, racism, and ideology. The only way that we can do it is only through education. And from my perspective, my mission in life is an acronym of a Hebrew word, emet, which means truth, to educate the next generation, to motivate them to be the best that they can be, to empower them to become upstanders. All the tragedies in the world happened because the world stood by and did nothing. So it's not sufficient to be knowledgeable. We have to become active. We have to take example from Martin Luther King Jr., who just celebrated, his day. We are not united, and we have to bring other groups of people. And one of the most important things from my perspective, the media has to be with us. And if you want, I will tell you about a national rally that was basically, from my perspective, a complete failure, called No Fear. We have the time. I would.
Sammy, let me get back to something you said. You said education is the answer. Education is the answer. The German people were highly educated. The Nazism in Germany was perpetrated by people who had degrees, who had diplomas.
Intellectuals,
correct.
Right.
That is the ideology. That is the ideology. The difference between Hamas and the Nazis, they tried, to hide, their crimes. At the same time, they had an ideology. Hamas is pure hate. What's happening in the Middle East is a war between evil and good. And we have to remember that.
Yeah, let me respond to the Christian role in this, because for the first 300 years of Christianity, the Christians were persecuted. I mean, Gentiles became the major portion of the Christian faith and Christian religion, but it's not until it became the state religion of Rome that it began to take on certain perspectives and intertwine with certain ethnicities and pagan understandings. So it's how the scripture and how Jesus was interpreted, or should I say misinterpreted, in many, many centuries later after his life here on earth. You have someone like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who gave his life to push back against Nazism and that whole ideology that was perpetrated against the Jewish people. So I think it's important that we understand that there are those who can take a religious belief system, all right, and abuse it and misuse it to justify their political or social agendas. And this is what was done. The Jews were marginalized within Roman society. They couldn't vote. They couldn't own property. They were the first to experience what we call ghettos today. That didn't begin with African Americans. It began with the Jewish people. So I think it's important to understand that religion of itself can be good, but what men do with religion or in the name of religion, we need to separate.
But extend that to education.
Exactly.
But extend that to education. If you only know science and there's no moral component to that education, science can be deadly, right?
Yeah.
You have to.
As a matter of fact, I tell the teachers, the crimes were committed by the educated people. And what I'm saying to them is teach the young people not only, their minds, also teach them their heart. And that is very, very important.
It's interesting, Rev, that Sami said Jews didn't have a country, and that made them very vulnerable. And, the thought of extermination, expulsion. Now they have a country, and they still have the threat, of being destroyed. So whether you have a country, you don't, having a country obviously is of great value because you have a place that will protect you. But even by having a country, it doesn't mean it's going to diminish the hatred.
Right.
I wrote that down. I think that was a powerful statement.
The interesting part is they say they are against Israel, but they're not talking about Israelis.
No.
They are talking about Jews worldwide. So, and this is, we have to be very precise with the words that we are using. Okay, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Okay, people say the area that is west, of Jerusalem, east of Jerusalem. Okay, they call it West Bank. A Jewish leader, Prime Minister, used the word West Bank. We are indigenous to the land. We should use it, Judea and Samaria. We come from Judea. But if for political reason you don't want to use it, call it disputed territories. And take a look at the difference between disputed territories, Judea and Samaria, or West Bank. When you use the word West Bank, the first thing that comes to mind is occupation, confrontation. Nothing can be resolved. If you use Judea and Samaria, acknowledging that we are indigenous to the land, which means that we cannot occupy. Italians cannot occupy Italy. Iranians cannot occupy Iran. We cannot occupy our land. But when you use disputed territories, that implies that if both sides are willing to sit and to talk, they come to a resolution. And that's why words are extremely important. We have to be precise.
Yeah, that's good.
Precise with the
Sami,
words.
the Reverend and I wanted to have you on the air because tomorrow is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it recalls the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And people, and I must say, people who are not only Jews, but people from all the different backgrounds and beliefs come together in so many communities to say it happened to them, it could have happened to us, and to prevent it from happening to anyone else, we have to speak together as loudly and as morally and as clearly as we can.
With two conditions. Number one, we have to speak with one voice. We speak with too many voices and it's lost in the translation. And the second one, we have the media in our side. Without the media, nothing will happen. And I can give you an example, if we have the time, about the national rally in D.C. called No Fear.
All right, we have about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Please go ahead, Sami.
You want me to tell you about it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what happened is there was a national rally. They expected several 100,000 people from all over the country. Okay, only 3,000 people came. Okay, they had the senator. They had a representative. They had wonderful speakers. Not a single Jew was there, Jewish leader. Not the media was not there. And I have asked people, have you heard of the national rally called No Fear? Nobody knows. Without the media, and this is what I'm trying to stress, we have to speak with one voice, okay, not with many voices, one single voice. Take example from Martin Luther King Jr., okay, and bring the media. Without the media, our message will be lost.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Sami Steigmann.
Wow.
A Holocaust, as you said, not just a witness, but someone who is a teacher. And when I met him, I was taken by the fact that he devotes his life to speaking to young people.
Right.
Because if we don't reach them, then we have failed.
Yeah. Well,
and
education,
I will
like you
speak
said,
to anybody. I spoke to 1,200 students. Not a single Jewish the student was there. I even spoke at the church of what do you call it, Scientology. Everybody has to know. Half of the world population does not know that the Holocaust happened. 1/3 believe it's a myth or exaggerated. And young people, from my personal experience, I can tell you unequivocally, they're totally clueless.
Okay.
well, I appreciate that, but I love what you said about education. And yeah, they were educated. They were intellectuals that crafted that kind of an ideology in Germany. But at least with education, people are exposed to words and ideas that should touch the conscience and evoke some type of moral standard in terms of their actions. And that's what we hope for, that's what we pray for. Sami, it just great having you on the program. God bless you for all that you have been through and can be such a strong voice and advocate to keep this in remembrance. Thank you for being on the program.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Stay strong.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. God bless. And stay tuned. We'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on 77 WABC.
Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, you said something last week that I think is worth repeating, and that is in Jewish tradition, the word remember is something that is mentioned again and again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have to remember, and I think having these guests on today, Bill Tingling, Sami Steigmann, in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, highlights the fact that we have to look back. If we want to look forward to a future, we have to look back to a past that was ugly. So,
you know, in our faith tradition, Rabbi, we believe that the Spirit of God stirs people's heart concerning justice, concerning righteousness, concerning those things that are not in balance within human society. So you listen to a Bill Tingling, who has been on this for quite a few years and filled with so much passion, you know, and has this sensitivity to the Jewish experience and Holocaust survivors. You know, I believe that's God stirred. I really do.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you have a non-Jew who's willing to really declare how immoral these atrocities were, when it comes from the mouth of a non-Jew, it carries great weight. Because what it's saying is the Holocaust is not just your story, it's our responsibility to tell your story. Yeah.
I think about the Jewish leaders who stood with Dr. King and some of the African American leaders of civil rights movement back in the 60s. And it took that. It took other voices to chime in and speak out against these injustices.
Yeah.
And the need for society to correct them. Yeah, absolutely, Rabbi.
So that's why when we talk about love your neighbor, it doesn't say you just love your Jewish neighbor or your Christian neighbor. There's a real mandate there to stand with people who are suffering, no matter what their background is.
Right.
And I think our two guests highlighted the fact that we need to be there for one another.
Yeah. So how do you celebrate Holocaust Remembrance Day? Is it a series of services and meetings?
Yeah, there are many programs. The UN has, different synagogues have them. I remember churches have them on their calendar. It is something where we meet with Holocaust survivors. We try to, by the way, the numbers are diminishing. Years ago, you had many more Holocaust survivors, obviously, than you have today. So when you have an opportunity to hear from a survivor who will tell the story, you want to grasp every word. But it's also a commitment that you make that I am going to do whatever I can to see that these young people are not infected with this disease.
Right.
And it's very sad today on campuses when you see the hatred that is pervasive in too many places.
Yeah, as I said, you know, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but, you know, again and again, rehearse this in the ears of your children.
Yeah.
You shall put them in remembrance of these things. I mean, we have to. Otherwise, we'll repeat it.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll just fade, become legend, and then we'll say it never happened, right? Which there are those who say.
Well, Sami went from Holocaust to October 7th. You know, speaking of the hatred, the horrendous destruction of innocent lives, you can try to make some distinction, but overall, it all comes back to the hatred of the Jew, not just the hatred of the Israeli, the hatred of the Jew. And unfortunately, we're seeing it in this country as well. And hopefully, by people staying together and by, also there have to be consequences for universities that permit this behavior. They have to pay a price, and I think under this administration, they will pay a price. Thank you, Rev.
I think so, too. All right. Great program, and thank you for tuning in another Sunday morning right here on 77 WABC with the Rev
and the Rabbi.
And the Rabbi.